Hey everybody, this is Brett. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. Today is September 6th, and I'm Brett. I already said I'm Brett, so you know I'm Brett for sure.
I already knew that, actually.
And you are Cory.
I am.
Thank you very much for being here. And on the phone tonight, we have Larken Rose.
Barack Obama.
Oh, I wish. What a score of a guest that would be. Next year.
Unfortunately, it's just me instead.
We got 4 years to figure out how to cut into the live feed at the Democratic National Convention.
You can do it.
We can. But in 4 years, anything will be possible. If someone said to me in 2008, you have 4 years to figure out how to stream a live video show,
right?
I would have said that's not enough time.
That's not enough time. I'll have to invent everything myself.
Exactly. So who knows what we'll be able to do in 4 years.
I'm going to have to grind my own lenses for the cameras.
So I wanted to, just before we move on into this segment, I wanted to set the tone by reading just a quick paragraph from Larken's book. This is a couple pages after what he read. The trouble is that the average person's belief system rests upon a hodgepodge of vague, often contradictory concepts and assumptions. Terms such as morality and obedience, laws and legislatures, leaders and citizens are used constantly by people who have never rationally examined such concepts. The first step in trying to understand the nature of authority or government is to define what the word means. Oh, isn't that the truth? What is this thing called government? So, Larken, just as we went to the break in the last segment, you were saying that this refers to the right to rule. What does that mean?
Well, it's not, and the people who use the term government don't even think about this enough to know what it is they're saying. It's not just the ability to control people. Like lots of gangs or individuals have that. When people talk about government and they call their commands laws, and when they demand money, they call it taxes. The way people talk about it actually shows the nature of what it is or what they imagine it to be, which is a group that has the moral right to tell the rest of us what to do and to hurt us if we disobey. And which in turn implies that the rest of us have a moral obligation to obey, and that it's actually immoral and bad for us to disobey those in government. And that's, you know, in contrast to if you disobey a street gang, nobody thinks you're the bad guy. And nobody thinks they have the moral right to rule. They might have the ability, they might have enough violence behind them that they can do such things, but it's the perception that there's something legitimate about the violent domination of others that government does that makes it government. Because if people don't imagine it to be a legitimate ruling class, they don't call it government. They just call it a gang or whatever else. So there's that essential moral component to the belief in authority and government. Authority is basically the right to rule. That's the moral component, that it, because of what it is, whether from the rituals or whatever else, it has the right to do this to us, to control us and boss us around and take our money, and we're bad if we disobey. That's really what is implied by the term government.
So we would all have that right then to do that. I mean, if it was like government has the right to take things from people to use towards other things, then wouldn't that mean that the people would have that right?
Right. We are the government.
Whoa,
government
Cory.
is us.
Right, we are. Yeah, well, as soon as you start to look at the concept rationally, everything just explodes. It doesn't make any sense, because one of the most basic ways to point out that the notion of government is bogus is to say, well, can human beings give somebody else a right they don't have?
Right.
And if they can't, then how did the people in government get those rights? They couldn't have. And then you could say, well, if they have the right to do it, then so do I. We're both just people. You know, they may have a huge office and drive around a limo. They're still just a human being. They have the same rights I do. If they can tax you, so can I. And actually, the correct conclusion is, if I can't tax you, neither can they. But that's something that goes against people's indoctrination and against the whole belief in government, the whole belief that there really can be such thing as a legitimate ruling class that's allowed to do things that would be bad if I did it or you did it or any normal person would do it. But if this superhuman thing called government does it, then it's okay. That's really the essence of the belief in government. Now, that there can be a thing that has an exemption from morality.
Right. Now you're throwing around a lot of beliefs like superstition, or words like belief, superstition, and myth. Around page 10, some people are going to be kind of shocked when you make the assertion that government doesn't even exist in objective reality. But don't we see and experience it like all around us all the time? Feel it? No,
we do not. Now, people can say, well, of course it's real. Look, if you go to Washington, you see big buildings. Yeah, the buildings exist. Where's government? Well, you can see the politicians. They're real. Yeah, they're people. They talk funny, but they're people. Well, what about the cops? Yeah, those are people too. And they have real guns and real tanks and real planes and all that's real. Right. Government is not, because government is not the sum of buildings and people and guns and law books and all that. Government implies the right to rule. And that does not exist. Again, a gang can have people and buildings and guns and tanks and all that. The only reason you call it government is if you imagine that it has the right to dominate and control and extort lots and lots of other people. Without that right, it ceases to be government. So I'm not pretending that if you go to Washington, you'll just find a big empty parking lot. I know what's there, but it is not government. It is a gang of thugs and thieves and liars that people imagine to be government because they hallucinate authority where there is none. They imagine it has the right to control us and boss us around and take our money when it doesn't. And if they don't have that right, as soon as you recognize that they really don't have the right to do any of that, they stop looking like government and just start looking like a gang of thieves and thugs.
Right. If you take what people think of when they're thinking of government, or the mental images even that comes to mind when you mention government to somebody, a good way to illustrate, I think, that it's just made up of people, it doesn't do anything in and of itself, is if you took what people think of as government and you removed all humans from it, it wouldn't do anything.
Right. It wouldn't be any. There's nothing there. There's actually, I did a talk about this, and somebody made an animated thing of a guy talking to an alien that's on YouTube, where the alien comes down and he's trying to understand what this thing called government is. And he goes through, well, is it the building? Well, no, it's not the building. And is it the politician? And for a while, it seems like it's the politician until you realize, well, no, by himself, he's not allowed to tax you and regulate you. And it basically goes through that and eliminates everything until there's kind of nothing left. So it's not the people, it's not the guns, it's not the books, it's not the buildings. Well, what is it? And it really is this bizarre, supernatural, mythical entity that everyone in it claims to be acting on behalf of. Congress says, well, this is the law of the land. No, it's not. It's some words that you just scribbled on that piece of paper. But they talk about it in the abstract like it's something superhuman. And the cops say, well, don't blame me for what I'm doing. This is the law, whatever that is. Well, isn't the law just scribbles of human beings in a big building? But people imagine that it's not. They really imagine that it's something fundamentally different than ink that was put on paper by human beings.
And as we're going to get into in more detail as the show goes on, this, as we have defined it and described it through your book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, is essentially a religious belief.
Yep.
And we are not supposed to talk about religion in polite company because people go nuts.
But you're not supposed to talk about politics in polite company either, so...
But I repeat myself.
And you're really not supposed to talk about the fact that politics is religion in polite company.
I've tried. It really doesn't go well.
Yeah, and the reason people freak out when you challenge their ideas in government is because they are faith-based ideas. They're not the result of logic and thinking. It's something they were just taught to take on faith, that we have to have a ruling class and that it has the right to do these things to us.
In the next segment, we are going to expand on that idea, the challenges of bringing these ideas to other people. This is School Sucks Live with Larken Rose. We'll be back in a few. In the second hour, we'll start taking your calls.
Get 18,000